Welcome to Between the Tackles. I am your host, Manish Mehta. Unfortunately, Burge cannot be with us today, so I will be flying solo, and I am thrilled to welcome Gary Vaynerchuk. If you are somehow unaware, Gary V is an entrepreneur, marketing guru, social media specialist extraordinaire who serves as the chairman of VaynerX, the CEO of VaynerMedia, co-creator and CEO of VFriends, and oh, by the way, he is a six-time New York Times best-selling author. He is also the rarest of New York Jet fans, one who chooses to see the good in every situation. So, welcome, Gary. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thanks, brother. How are you?
Doing great. Let's get into it. Less than a decade ago, your brother AJ and you co-founded VaynerSports and embarked on what I thought was a daunting endeavor, just given how crowded the NFL agency space already was. Nearly 1,000 certified NFL agents, about 2,000 players. But you guys are building something impactful in a relatively short amount of time. You represent superstar players like Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner. You also represent Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles, who is a projected top 10 pick in this week's NFL draft. I've always appreciated your growth mindset, so I want to ask you right off the top, what would you like to happen for VaynerSports, both in the short term and the long term?
Thanks, brother. I mean, look, I appreciate it because you definitely were there from day one and saw the birth of it. I mean, I'm 50 now, I'm grown. So, I have a 30-year career of like everything I've entered. Doesn't look obvious on paper, right? Launching a website for a liquor store in 1996, not obvious. Starting a wine show on this new app called YouTube, not obvious. Building a personal brand through social media, not obvious. Building this advertising agency, talk about a crowded field. What we pulled off in VaynerSports is very unlikely. What we've pulled off on Madison Avenue has been even more unlikely. So, AJ and I, we really, if we're passionate, if we think we can, here's what we do know, and I think you know this about me, and it's really good to see you, man. And you look great, by the way. You decided not to age.
Thanks. I got a 17-month-old son, so he's keeping me active.
That's awesome. We are good at a couple things. We are real life, no bull crap. We're good dudes. And I think that matters at the end of the day. I think nice guys do finish last in a way that the world does not recognize. And two, we're self-aware of what we're talented at, right? It was not hard for me to think we could disrupt sports agency land because even though there were a lot of great agents, and there are, Mulugeta, I think, is a beast. There's a bunch of great ones, right? We knew that we were better out off the field than anyone else. I knew. I mean, look, everyone has superstars. Our superstars, Sauce Gardner and Aiden Hutchinson, have multiple national marketing deals. Everybody can negotiate contracts. Like Kirk Cousins is a meme for how well he's done in negotiations. That's, VaynerSports. Talking about other sports, Bo Bichette's deal with the Mets is like pointed to as remarkable. So we knew we could negotiate as well as anyone, but we thought in marketing, social media growth, you look at Jawan Johnson, you look at Isaac Rochelle, these are not the biggest names in football, but their TikTok execution with their wives that I structured as a strategy for them has changed their lives. And so we knew who we were. We knew that was an added value to the ecosystem. And here we are now as a top firm.
Yeah, I want to make an analogy between VaynerSports and your garden variety NFL team. In business and in sports, you can grow in two distinct ways. You can do it organically. In the NFL, that means building through the draft. In your case, that would mean homegrown agents building their portfolio, or you can build with the help of established players in free agency, or in your industry, adding proven agents. You had mentioned Kirk Cousins. Obviously, you brought along Mike McCartney from Priority Sports several years back.
Yes.
When you're thinking about how to build and grow the NFL arm of Vaynersports, you'd mentioned Dave Muguleta from Athletes First. There's other, high-end agents, proven agents with high-end clientele. Joel Siegel, Tory Dandy from CAA. If guys like that would become available, would you try to recruit them to become a part of VaynerSports?
What a great question. Thank you for a real journalistic question. We spoke to a lot of them, a lot of the greatest names. We recruited Mike for 5-6 years. We knew Mike, out of all the agents out there, was the most like a Vaynerchuk, just a good, I mean, I don't know if you know Mike.
I
Like,
do, yeah.
I mean, then I don't have to tell you. And I know anyone who's listening who knows him knows that I'm underselling what I'm about to say. Salt of the earth, family man, good human, cares deeply about his guys at all cost. First pick overall, UDFA, everything in between. It's the human, not the dollar signs attached to the human. And so, he was our biggest target. We actually couldn't get him because he was at his prior place for so long. And so we had a lot of conversations. We grew. We then added Mike and Jamie, a young agent who we love so much, Moen. And then so we're homegrown predominantly with and so we would say we're more like, I don't know who gets credit these days, whether it's Pittsburgh or some others. We're draft dominant with the occasional strategic free agent. And we've kind of gone, real talk, we've gone 2 for 2, with Jamie and Mike so far with we don't do that often. So that is our overall strategy. And now, Manish, you'll appreciate this. Early on, we really, in sports agency land, you kind of need to grow from free agency because it's a rich get richer business. Me and AJ, Brian McLaughlin, who reps Sonny, we decided to eat a lot of crow for 5-6 years. Because you go in these rooms, and because of me and my brand, we would get into the final 2 and 3. And then there was inevitably in those first 5 years, who else do you rep? And it's kind of and then you're competing, you walk out in CAA or Athletes First walk in, they're like, first slide, we rep 197 Pro Bowlers. I'm empathetic to a family where this is their life-changing moment. Even though I did all these things in real life outside of sports, I could only speak to who I was as a man, who AJ was. AJ negotiated much bigger contracts with the biggest companies in the world when he was in his early 20s running this business with me. So I knew who he was, but the football world had not known yet. So let's put it this way, it's nice to be on the other side.
I'm sure it is. Look, it's no secret that your lifelong ambition is to one day become the majority owner of the New York Jets. It's also no secret that the NFL is now allowing private equity firms to invest in teams. Several teams have taken advantage of that. Most recently, I believe the Miami Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, sold 1% of the Dolphins, whose valuation is now $12.5 billion to somebody. So if you're not a math wizard, somebody paid $125 million for 1% of the Miami Dolphins. And when you look across this pro sports landscape, as you know, Gary, the San Diego Padres recently sold for $3.9 billion, which is about 60% more than what Steve Cohen paid for a big market team, the New York Mets, about 6 years ago.
That being said, for fun nerdum, it is the only in San Diego, which is an epic financial market. Yeah. It's the only game in town.
Right.
So I think that one has some really interesting nuances. To answer your question directly, I've done well, but private equity and sports teams have done better. And so in some ways, I'm never been closer, and in many ways, I've never been further away. There's a great Russian saying, I was born in the Soviet Union. It translates to, man makes plan and God laughs. So, listen, Manish, you know me a little bit. I really enjoy chasing the Jets. Would I like to own them? For sure. Nothing would make me, getting emotional about saying it now. Holding up the Lombardi trophy and being able to be the human that brought the delight that all of us have been waiting for would be such a crown jewel of my professional life. We'll see what happens, but I'm gonna truck at it. Luckily, the Johnsons are nice and young in the scheme of things, and I wish them nothing but good and health and all that. But if I can cook for another 12, 15 years and keep building the things I'm building, I'm gonna try to put myself in striking distance.
Would you consider buying or being part of an investment group that bought another team other than the New York Jets?
Not in football. No.
Have you spoken to?
I've hate every other team.
Okay,
In
hey,
fact-
fair enough.
in fact-
I appreciate
in
your
fact-
honesty.
Manish, in fact, you just put a financial dagger through my gut. When we saw, I don't even know if you know this, Steve Ross, who I saw last night, ironically, at the Knicks game, Stephen Ross owns a minority share of VaynerMedia.
Yes, I did know that.
He is my only investor. And when we did the transaction back in 14, 13, I don't remember when we did it, 11, 12, the original offer was equity in the Dolphins, not cash, which would be worth a lot more than the cash that we put into a fund. And we turned it down. We thought it was a much better deal to own a piece of the Dolphins than the deal of the venture fund. But we turned it down because there was no way I was going to be able to walk on earth with a minority ownership stake in the Miami Dolphins, who I despise. In fact, the highlight of my evening last night, because the Knicks loss was devastating, was bringing my son over to say hello to Mr. Ross. And I said, Xander, what do you think about the Miami Dolphins? And he says, I hate them. And Steve laughed, and I was proud, and we went back to our seats.
Have you ever discussed potential teaming up with Curtis Martin? I mean, he's obviously wanted to be an NFL owner for a long time. Yeah, I would think that Jet fans their heads would explode if there was a Gary V. Curtis Martin partnership that ultimately bought the team.
In fact, we had a very aggressive. In fact, Curtis Martin. Here's one for the archives. Here's an exclusive that is just fun for nerd history and football. Curtis was very close to being a partner in VaynerSports. We're very close. I think Curtis is brilliant and obviously an all-time Jet. Curtis Martin, my brother, and I flew to Washington State. Before we locked in our deal with VaynerSports, we were close. I would say we were in the red zone. It didn't get done, but not anything bad. I think he had such big ambitions to own, I think, the Panthers, that he decided the agency wasn't right for him. But you'll love this, Manish. Curtis Martin, me and my brother flew to Washington State to recruit Buda Baker for VaynerSports.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. We were right. We thought he was going to be a great pro. He turned out to be a great pro. So, yeah, it has been discussed. Curtis is the best. I'm very fond of him. I think he's very business savvy and very wonderful. Talk about another human that's wonderful. And yes, I do think a lot of Jet fans would think that was really cool if that happened.
Yeah, I've always thought that, excluding the Jets winning their one and only Super Bowl, you becoming a majority owner would be the best thing to happen to this franchise for a number of reasons. Your loyalty, of course, of being a lifelong Jet fan, the growth mindset that you have, but above all, your leadership. I've always believed that the best leaders empower their employees. They make them feel like they have a voice, so they're unafraid to give opinions. And ultimately, when you foster that type of environment, the company or the team, in this particular case, grows and you have sustainable success. How would you describe your leadership style?
I would describe it as the elimination of fear is like my religion. I do think fear suppresses any growth. I think merit, I don't have any horse in the race. When people walk into my company as an intern, in my brain, I'm like, I wonder if she's going to be the CEO of this company one day, right? It's actually my love of sports. You know what I love about sports? It doesn't matter that you went to Alabama. AJ reps Foye, the linebacker, down in Jacksonville. He went to Yale. I think he was a 5th or 6th round pick. It doesn't matter that he went to Yale, which in this scenario is bad, right? In real life, Yale is epic. In football life, Yale is not epic. But once you hit the field, you hit the field. And I think in corporations, we overvalue where people went to school. We overvalue tenure. We overvalue many things. I tend to undervalue it. I kind of take it at face value. I also think it's always like sports. Back to one of my favorite Jets moments. I think everything's the Monday Night Miracle. I think life is the Monday Night Miracle. I don't care that you're down 30-7. I don't care that you've had tons of adversity in your life or you've had a bad year. At any moment, Vinny can hit Wayne and Lavernius and Jermaine Wiggins and Jumbo Elliott and Marcus Coleman can have 2 interceptions in overtime and John Hall can kick the winning field goal. I think life is the Monday Night Miracle. I think running organizations is the Monday Night Miracle. I think you give people grace, you give people rope, Manish, and if, with that rope, they can go forever, or as the old saying says, they can hang themselves. I like creating frameworks that play on optimism and merit, practicality, but positivity. And then the toughest part of being a leader is when you have to make tough decisions, whether that's firing someone because it's just not, it's like cutting a play. AJ always makes fun of me, back to taking it to the draft. If I ran all the people we signed at VaynerSports, we'd have unlimited UDFAs because I'm so into the humanity of a guy. I'm like, that guy's a dog. AJ's like, he runs a 6'4" 40. It's like, like there is a little bit of like talent. I get a little ideological at times, but that would be my answer to Mike.
Look, I know we're a little short on time, but the word on the street was that you were a playground legend at MLK Elementary, and unfortunately, physically, it didn't happen for you later in life. But you've had an incredible ability to connect with so many professional athletes. Your relationship, of course, with Sam Darnold, dating back to his college days, is well documented. Why do you think you're able to connect with these people? And then, as a quick follow-up to that, generally speaking, you've made such a difference in people's lives, and frankly, you don't need to. You could go along with your day. You can build your businesses. You've positioned yourself, of course, financially extremely well. So why do it? Why the daily posts, the daily messages to convey to people, that you've never even met?
Thank you. I think both of them sit pretty similar. Listen, all those flowers, which I appreciate, I'm unable to hold on to. I'll pass them directly to my parents, especially my mother. I was just well parented. The answer to both of those questions is deep down at the end of the day, when I'm all wrapped up and I get my 5 minutes on social media of people remembering me, I really hope it's a lot more about the people that got to know me that's not on camera, not public, of like, that I want to be nice guy. I don't want to be made money guy. I don't even want to be Jets owner that finally won us a Super Bowl guy, which would be really cool. I really hope that the overwhelming 5 minutes on whatever the Twitter of the day is I met him in real life, or my grandpa told me because hopefully it's a long time from now. My grandpa told me a story about him that he did X, Y, and Z. It's when the lights are off guy that I want to be. And so, I think both, why do I connect with people? Because I like them. Manish, I like people more than they like me. And this, like I think you might have been at LaGuardia going to I'm trying to think of the first time we met in physical form, not through a tweet or something. Whether it's you or whether it's Sam Darnold, or I think back to Quinnen Williams when I spoke to the Alabama team, which is why it was fun when he got here. I think most people, it's funny, back before no one knew who I was on earth, people very quickly, when they would meet me, be like, oh, this is a warm energy, like this is a nice guy energy. Now, as my life evolved over the last 20 years, I'm a public figure to some degree. So when people get my nice guy energy, now half the people actually meet it with cynicism, right? They're like, and I'm empathetic to that. They're like, what is this? But over time, the truth always unveils itself. And so, it's because I was well parented. And so Sam and Schmam and Bam and whoever else meets me, stranger to number one draft pick to CEO of the biggest companies in the world, they're gonna get the same person, which is I want to be friends, because why the hell not? Why not look for positivity? And then why the daily contact? Because I can't meet all 8 billion people. It's just not possible. But these social media platforms have allowed me to reach a lot more people, to send the message that was instilled in me by my mom and what I believe in, which is like, life is how you see it. Life is what you're looking for. And if you're looking for the negative in everyone, and if you're looking for the bad, and by the way, my father is like that. I love my dad more than life itself, but his default is cynicism, no, half glass empty. And then I have this mother on the other side. So I've been able to watch life, how it plays out when you default into it can be okay, or forgiveness is allowed, or I can have a step backwards but go 2 steps forward, and it can work out. Monday Night Miracle, everything's the Monday Night Miracle, is a much better life, It's a much better life. Knicks were up by 12 last night, by the way, in the recording. I don't know when you're seeing this. And all the Knicks fans around me, I could feel that they were, because of the way that franchise has gone, you could feel the fear that we were going to blow the lead. And when it happens, it becomes, I told you so, I told you so. But the hundreds of other times they don't blow the lead, they don't say that. But they do look for the negative, and then there's people that look for the positive. And delusion's bad. Delusion is bad. But practical optimism is the framework that I want the world to take on, and I will be a pusher of that agenda to the day I die.
Gary, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know that you have a difficult time saying no, even though you're inundated with requests. So I'm grateful that you decided to join me today. It was fun, informative, always thought-provoking. I greatly appreciate it. I hope to have you on again one day when I can officially congratulate you in becoming the majority owner of the New York Jets.
That's very sweet. Manish, real quick, back to between the tackles. I will say this for all Jet fans. We have the best young tackles in football, and that's something.
Yeah, you've done well. I think there's one piece of the puzzle. I'm not breaking any news here, but I think you have to eventually find the guy who's going to be the point guard to distribute the ball to all the young pieces I believe you will be acquiring over the next year or two.
I think you're right, brother. I wish you well.
Thanks, Gary. Take care.